And France 24's Emerald Maxwell has also been looking into this story today. She's with me now. Emerald, look, as we heard in that report, it wasn't just one case that was ruled on today by the court, it was three. They were rather similar. There was that Swiss one we heard a lot about there, but there was also one from Portugal and one from France, both of which the court didn't side with the claimant. So why did we hear such a mixed decision, given these cases actually are quite similar?
Yes, exactly. They're really over the question of whether government inaction on climate change violates human rights. But as ever, the devil is in the detail, and the different decisions come down to who was bringing them, which governments were being sued, and what the plaintiffs were asking for, all of which were very different in each three cases. The Portuguese youth, for instance, was suing 32 European governments, and their case was thrown out because the court said they hadn't exhausted the legal avenues available to them in Portugal before they turned to the European Court. But the Swiss verdict is actually significant for all the cases. And that's because the court president said that the Swiss authorities had failed to comply with their duty to adopt and to apply in practice regulations capable of mitigating the effects of climate change. And that is something that the court said constitutes a violation of the women's rights under the European Convention on Human Rights. And that is why the plaintiffs in all three cases are taking this as a win for all of them, not just the Swiss case, because all European countries are signed up to that European Convention of Human Rights, or ECHR. And so this verdict is binding and cannot be appealed. The Swiss government they've already reacted. They say they will analyse the judgment and review what measures it will take in the future. They could be compelled to take greater action on reducing emissions, but it could also eventually trickle down to other European countries.
Well, it sounds like it could be really a rather significant ruling then, Emerald.
Yes, potentially very significant. Climate activists are hailing it as a win and a turning point, which will set an important legal precedent. Because although activists have had successes in domestic cases, such as in Montana last year when a group of youths sued the American state over climate change, this is actually the first time that a European international level court has ruled on climate change. And the decision confirms for the first time that countries have an obligation to protect people from the effects of climate change. So it should really make governments sit up, because they can't ignore, they can't not comply with a binding court order. And today's decision also opens the door to more legal challenges. It even potentially serves as a blueprint for how to sue a government over climate inaction. So increasingly, the battle against the whole issue is being fought in the courtroom. We've seen that today, of course, but also Columbia University's Sabin Center said that as of mid-December, there were more than 2,500 cases lodged worldwide. 1,600 of them are in the United States, but there are also plenty coming from the small island developing states who are, of course, on the front line of climate change. In Strasbourg, there are currently 6 other climate cases in the pipeline, which were on hold pending today's decision, but will now make their way through the court. And, of course, today will have an impact on what the outcome of those. One of those lawsuits is it's a lawsuit against the Norwegian government that alleges it violated human rights by issuing new licenses for oil and gas explorations beyond 2035. So yes, today's decisions will be influential on their outcomes. But also, it's not just governments. Increasingly, companies are also being targeted by these lawsuits. And in another historic decision, Shell was ordered in 2021 to reduce its CO2 emissions by 45%. But equally, these high-emitting companies are actually fighting back in the courts as well. Shell, for instance, is appealing that decision, and other companies or groups of businesses are also beginning to file suits against laws, climate-friendly laws that they don't like. So yes, litigation in the climate fight